you can.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Partnership for International Birding video conference on birding in northern India. We just want to take a few minutes to lay some ground rules down on the call, and then I'll introduce Leio. We'll have about 40, 50 people on the call today. And so, you know, we do welcome people to ask questions. You'll find that there's some sort of natural breaks throughout the call to ask questions. Leo's going to cover 6 geographical birding sites on the tour, and after each we'll take a little break for questions. But in the meantime, you can always feel free to text questions into the chat box. And if you just click on chat and zoom your question my way, I will share it with Leio on the break. But feel free to just voice in as well when we take those breaks. In the meantime, try to stay muted up just because we've got a number of people on the call from around the world, and we just we want to keep the call moving along. So in summary, all questions are welcome. Just do so in an orderly fashion, and there you go. So the quick agenda today is Leo's going to talk about his 6 favorite birding sites from our northern India tour. This includes Ranthambore National Park. I call it National Park and Tiger Reserve since it's world famous for its tigers. The renowned wetlands of Bharatpur, the mid-altitude Himalayan bird watching, Corbett National Park, and which is in the shadow of the Himalayas. And truly, you'll learn just how rich birding is in India. And it's truly a country of very urban areas, but also of a lot of rural areas, which are excellent for bird watching. So with no further ado, I will introduce Leio de Souza. Go, my friend.
Hi, everybody. Well, this is an introduction to a few of the sites that we do on our tour in northern India. And the first birds that you see on the screen are sarus cranes that we get mainly around the wetlands at Bharatpur or in the fields as you drive around Bharatpur and Agra. You quite commonly see them in the fields around there. The sites that we'll be covering on this tour is mainly I'll be covering the sites of Ranthambore National Park, which is a tiger reserve, the wetlands at Bharatpur, and the surrounding areas like the Chambal River. And then we go up to the Himalayas and cover the foothills of Sattal and Pangot. And then we move down to Corbett, where a lot of the birding is done from jeeps and a little bit of it on foot. If you look at the map, in the corner on the right-hand side, you'll see the map of India. And in the square box is the sites that we are doing, that we cover, the different sites that we will be doing on this talk. Well, the first part that I will cover up is the Ranthambore National Park. Ranthambore National Park is used to be a former royal hunting reserve like Bharatpur as well. And within the park itself, you've got the fort and you've got a lot of ruins in the surrounding area. The landscape is mainly all grassland with thorn scrub forest and ravines. And there are a few lakes within the park, and there's a couple of lakes outside the park as well that we do visit. The main specialities that you will find in Ranthambore is desert specialities, because a lot of the ground around is very dry. And you do get the scrub forest where you get the forest species, and where there's all the wetlands, you get a lot of water birds that come in. A lot of them are migratory that come into the winter months in India. Ranthambore is also good for a lot of mammals, the main being Bengal tiger and leopard, sloth bear, and you also get desert fox and a lot of other mammals. The key species that you get in Ranthambore, mainly the cursor, painted spurfowl, painted sand grouse, chestnut-bellied sand grouse, around 6 species of vultures, sulphur-bellied warbler, which is quite a key species to find out there, Indian peafowl, which is widespread all over India, great thickney, black-bellied tern, which you can get on the ponds within the sanctuary and outside as well, Indian scorped owl, and tiger. Sightings like this with the tiger going across the path are quite common in Ranthambore, and you do get a few vehicles that line up to photograph these animals as they go across the path. Sometimes you just get them sitting along the roadsides. Indian cursor is a desert species which we do not find inside the park, but at the time when we are outside during lunch breaks and sometimes in the evenings, we drive and walk around the scrub areas surrounding the hotels, and we search for the Indian cursor. We also get a few species of larks and pipits. Ashy crowned sparrow lark is another specialty that you get around the grounds outside and inside the park as well. Painted sand grouse, you get them coming in the evenings to water holes for water, as well as you get them in midday. If you're walking through the scrubs, you find them under the bushes and things. So we go searching for them as we move around. Indian peafowl is a common species that you see all over India, right from the time probably you enter into Delhi and then move anywhere else, with the exception of up northeast. Bank myna is 2017. There's not a broad constituency. Bank myna is another species that is quite widespread and quite common. And you see it along the roadsides. You see it in the hotel gardens. Brahmani starling is another species that is seen in the gardens and along the roadsides as well. Indian silverbill, which you see on the top left corner, is a resident species that you find mainly in northern India. It is quite widespread, and you will see it in Ranthambore, and then you can see it in Bharatpur as well. Bayback shrike is again a species that's mainly to the desert, restricted to the desert areas. Indian roller is a widespread bird that's spread all over India. And Indian bushlark is mainly another desert species. In Ranthambore, mainly the focus is mainly on desert species and a few wetland species that you get out there. Yellow wattle lapwing is another dry area bird, which you usually find along dry field patches, and you have to scan them along the roadside, stopping. Great thickney, we usually get it within the park, wherever there's a little bit of water on the water's edge. You get them feeding and moving about. And then we have the leopard, Indian leopard, and the Bengal tiger, which are, I think, one of the highlights that everybody on a trip to India always has them on their wish list. So birding around Bharatpur, around Ranthambore, is mainly restricted to either a small four-wheel drive or a canter vehicle when you're into the park, and you're not allowed to get out of it only at certain points. So you spend the full morning in the vehicle and you go on different trails. They've got different zones that are allotted, and you move around them, and you have to bird from the vehicle itself. It does make it a bit difficult, but because we have a vehicle that's big enough for a small group of 8 people, you can move in the vehicle quite easily. And the vehicle even moves back and forth, so you get nice sightings of things. And when we're outside the park, we do a lot of birding on foot, where we walk around the dry scrub area, scanning and searching for larks, pipits, cursors, sand grouse, and a lot of other species that we get in the area. So that's with Ranthambore. I will move on to Bharatpur, but in case anybody's got any questions.
Let's stop for a few questions, Leo. And I have a couple if people don't hype in. Any questions from our participants at all? Feel free to unmute and ask away or text in as you see fit. Hearing none, I just wanted to clarify. So, you know, I've obviously done this tour with you, or at least about half of it. So I know it pretty well. I mean, the Jeep situation at Ranthambore was, I thought, surprisingly good. I mean, we had a massive Jeep with about at least 20, 24 seats, and our group took up about 8 of those seats. So we had, I mean, when the vehicle stopped, you can literally run from one side of the vehicle to the other for either photography or bird viewing without really obstructing others on the tour, because the Jeep is so large. It's not like a small Jeep, it's a huge Jeep, like the size of like a giant construction vehicle, but flat like a Jeep. But the point is, it's like a moving platform going throughout the park. So it's not like a small Jeep where you're crowded in with bad views. It's like a big Jeep where you can float around and actually do quite a bit of bird watching. Is that a fair description, my friend?
Yeah, perfect.
Right. And then the other thing is, we truly end up doing what well over half the time outside of the national park, but the birding is actually quite good outside the park as well, when we're not with a Jeep, but with our regular tour vehicle, where we can walk around and do quite a bit of bird watching. And we actually walk around and do quite a bit of bird watching. I mean, the typical walk's what, about an hour and a half in
Yeah. It's around an hour and a half. Yeah.
Yep, not bad. And so the walks are nice, and they're actually pretty gentle, and a good, pretty decent range of habitat outside the park as well. Certainly a good range of bird watching. And so, you know, the bird watching inside the park is well enhanced by the bird watching outside the park. So it works really well. And there you go. And you like to always have like 2 days to get tiger, even though you often get it on day one. I've probably just cursed it, but you typically schedule 2 days at all the tiger reserves to make sure you.
Yeah, we do typically two or more days. 2 or more days is the best for getting a tiger sighting anywhere in any reserve.
Gotcha. Golly geez. Any other questions, folks? Okay, on to Bharatpur.
Well, the second site is Bharatpur Bird Sanctuary, which is a well-known World Heritage Site, which is also a Ramsar site. And it's quite famous bird sanctuary in India. I mean, it's not very big. It's just 29 square kilometers, and it's man-made with shallow lakes and fresh waters, and it's got woodlands and scrubs and grasslands. It's surrounded by cultivated paddy fields, and it does host a lot of migrant birds that come in during the winter months. And the forest and the fields surrounding the reserve are very good for all other dry scrubland birds as well. So we do spend a lot of time outside the park again, and we do spend a whole day within the park. Birding in Bharatpur is quite easy because it's all done mainly along one straight road. And you have a cycle rickshaw wherein you get 2 people sitting in it and a person to cycle you around. So as you move along, you keep stopping and viewing the birds on each side of the road. There are ponds, there's loads of birds nesting, and there are few paths that go off the main road, which we do take them especially searching for the nightjar or for the orange-headed thrush, then you've got to spend a little bit of time looking under bushes and things for the Siberian ruby throat. And so we spend the whole day just cycling up and walking all the areas within the park. This is what the park looks like in a good season. I mean, we have had years when the water levels were quite low because the farmers surrounding the reserve do pump out a lot of the groundwater to cultivate their fields. But the park has been pumping in water from the Chambal River, and which is keeping the level of water quite high. And in the last few years, the number of species again has come up to quite a lot, like what it was before. The main species or the key species that we look for around Bharatpur, I mean, these are some of them, not all of them, is Sarus crane, painted storks, which you find nesting in the trees around there, bar-headed goose, which you find quite commonly in some of the pools. White-tailed lapwings are quite regular within the park. Black bitterns, greater painted snipes. We have certain spots within the park and outside the park as well for the greater painted snipe. Orange-headed thrushes, you do get a few that come into the park, and we do search for them in the surrounding areas because orange-headed thrushes are not very common in northern India and not very easy to find. So there's just a few that come into certain areas. Siberian ruby throat, we do have a regular site for one in Bharatpur, but we also get them up in the foothills. Black-breasted weavers are found within the park and outside the park as well. Imperial eagle is quite often seen within the park, and you get dusky eagle owls that's been nesting on a regular basis every year within the park. And large-tailed nightjar is another common resident in the park. So we make sure that we target the main species besides all the other species that we can see in the park. Black-necked stork, is one of the common species which you get in the park, but there's not many in numbers. So you have to keep searching for them to find them because they do fly outside the park and they feed outside the park as well. Painted snipes, we do have various sites for them. We've got a couple of sites outside the park and in the park as well. You get them in the evenings. Painted storks, they nest every year within the park, so it's quite common to see them, and you see them in really big numbers. Siberian ruby throat, the one on the top left, is a resident up in the foothills, but you do get them coming down to Bharatpur in the winter, and we usually get at least one sighting of one in Bharatpur. The Eurasian wryneck is regularly seen as we do our walks outside the park into the dry scrub or into the paddy fields, cultivated fields. And it's very good chances for finding the Eurasian wryneck. Orange-headed thrush, like I said, is not a very common species, but we put in all the efforts to find them because we do not get them throughout the trip. So we try and focus mainly on things that you will not see later on in the tour, or the chances are quite less of seeing. So we try and focus on those species down in the plains. Like certain species are restricted only to the desert area and the plains. So we try and focus on those species, whereas some are more common and more widespread that we could get probably back in Corbett and places like that. And then you got crested bunting. Again, it's one of the few buntings that we get in northern India on the tour. But crested bunting is quite a beautiful bunting, and we see it mainly, you do get it in the park, but you see it more outside in the open fields Circle malcoa is one bird that's quite hard to find. We do search a lot for it and put a lot of effort in finding it in when we look around in Ranthambore, mainly outside the park when we're walking around in the scrub. And then we also search for it in Bharatpur. They are sort of skulkers and they're very shy. So it takes quite an effort to find them, even though they're quite a large bird. The black-breasted weavers are quite regularly seen outside the park as we walk around in the fields and everything. And then you have white-tailed lapwing, which is again a common visitor to the park in winter. We also do a visit to the Chambal River. And I mean, the main species along the Chambal River is the black-bellied tern, Indian skimmer, gharial, brown crake, and then you've also got the river dolphin, and you get a lot of shell ducks and a lot of other species. But our main focus is the Indian skimmer, the gharials, the dolphin, and the sandlark when we go off to the Chambal River. We cruise on the Chambal River by boat. We have a small boat, which we use 2 boats. Usually, if there's a group of 8, we try and use 2 boats. And we just slowly drift upriver and scan the river to small patches of the small sandbanks in the river where the skimmers usually tend to come and sit on. So sometimes you have to go quite a distance before you find them. And then you keep picking up all the other birds on the side, like the brown crake or the sandlark. Gharials are quite common in the river, so they're quite easy to see. In Bharatpur, a lot of the birding is done on foot outside the park. And in the park, it's mainly you're with the cycle rickshaws. So you have them with you the whole time, but you can walk as long as you walk. And then if you're tired, it gives you the option to get back onto the cycle rickshaw. Even if you're carrying anything with you, like your bags, your tripod, telescopes, you can always leave it in the cycle rickshaws. It's very safe. You've got no problems at all with that. So the person who is riding the cycle rickshaw always takes care of your things. So you're free to walk away and take photographs or just spend the whole day either on foot or in the cycle rickshaws. We usually have a picnic lunch when we go in there. So we spend like the whole day, right from morning after breakfast, we spend the whole day and come back straight out in the evening. And then when we go birding outside the park on the other days we usually spend the whole day out in the field and come back for lunch. So it's like the full morning and then back again. The river trip up to Chambal is a couple of hours. It's usually around 4 to 5 hours. And then we're back out of the boat again. So that's with the site of Bharatpur and Chambal River. So before I move on, Charles,
yeah, no, let's ask a couple. Let's get some questions out there. So one of the clients just shared sort of her recollection of some of the raptors that fly around a bit. So greater spotted eagle, lesser spotted eagle, tawny eagles. Anybody who knows me well as a bird watcher knows that I am not a big raptor. It's not that I dislike them; I just like little birds. But besides those 3 raptor species, what else is sort of flying around in the Chambal and Bharatpur area?
I mean, it's mainly imperial eagles, steppe eagles, tawny eagles, Indian spotted, greater spotted. I think those are the main ones. And then you got shikara. Those are the main.
And you had mentioned, gosh, what owl species was that? I thought I wrote it down. The one that's the one that we worked really hard for, more like Lokesh worked really hard for, but it's usually perched up, that sort of large owl you find in Bharatpur?
Brown hawk,
Remind me of the
brown hawk owl.
brown hawk owl. That's it, baby. So that's usually in Bharatpur. You just have to find it, and it
Yeah,
takes a bit of work.
yeah, the brown hawk owl is usually either in Bharatpur or in Chambal. So
Okay.
yeah, we usually somebody or the other knows the day roost for the owl.
Right. So it's more of a diurnal experience, not a nocturnal
Yeah.
experience. Yeah, and then just a little bit more about the rickshaws. I mean, as you know, that surprised me quite a bit. I was sort of uncomfortable being wheeled around, but I guess I got used to that luxury. But literally, we leave the hotel by rickshaw and we come back by rickshaw. And the rickshaw ride to the park is what, 15, 20 minutes or something?
Yeah,
Maybe
around
even 10
15, less than that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not far.
No.
And then, but we do get out of the rickshaws and walk. And so basically the rickshaws take us from birding stop to birding stop, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it really just saves us from walking throughout
And wasting
the reserve.
time. Yeah.
But we get a lot of birding in by foot as well. And I would say what about 80% is by foot and 20% by rickshaw.
That's right.
But probably the distance is reversed. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting experience birding by rickshaw and foot. And then what else? Oh, and you keep mentioning winter. So winter, what are the winter months in India?
November to March. February.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we typically run this tour in November, December, because that's when the migrants are moving and coming down. Is that the deal?
Yeah, we do it in November, December, and then we do it in February, March.
Right. And so we do this tour for 4 months, and it all has to do with the Himalayan migrants coming down. And there you go. And when you say winter in that part of India, I can't remember I had a jacket on. I probably did, but it's what's the typical temperature range?
I mean, it could go down when you're down in Ranthambore and Bharatpur, sometimes it can go down to around 8, which you would have to calculate and convert. But
I got to look at this, man.
Yeah, but the thing is the contrast between the daytime temperatures and the early morning and evening is totally different.
So it's cool in the morning.
Yeah.
And in the afternoon, it gets into be about maybe 70, 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And the mornings are cool, but maybe like a jacket cool.
That's right.
Maybe high 50s, low 60s Fahrenheit. And then in the higher altitude parts of the tour, it's a bit chillier, but not terrible cold at all. Like maybe 45 at night. Is that about right?
Yeah.
You're gonna make me convert that. This is one of our language difficulties as I speak in Fahrenheit. Yes. Okay. So 8 Celsius is about as cold as it gets at night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I might add my guesstimates were right. That's about 45 Fahrenheit. And then in the higher altitudes, the day highs are typically high 60s, low 70s. So quite comfortable during the day. And so though it's quote winter, it's not like winter in the UK and the USA with snow on the ground. It's like actually pretty nice weather overall. And there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, winter means for some people visualizes snow on the ground. It's nothing like that at all. So another question here is, I'm seeing a bunch of new species for me in this presentation. What is the total number of species seen on this tour? You want me to answer that question, or do you want to answer it?
You can answer it, Charles.
With some gusto, baby.
You can answer it.
Yeah. So Leo and I had a pre-tour chat about this. The aim of this tour is to get about 400 species. If he has an incredibly slow group, it could cost him maybe 20 species. If you have a really good group, you can get above 410 species. Is that a fair description, sir?
Well, the highest we have got is 415 on the 2-week tour.
415, correct?
415, but that was actually pushing it because the group wanted to hit somebody else's earlier target of 410. So, so they pushed it and we got 415. But on an easy pace, on a normal tour, you can easily get 370, 380 species without.
Yeah. So I mean, if you get a bunch of slow birdwatch archers, it'll cost you about 20 species. But if you have, I mean, the person who's asking is a pretty gung-ho bird watcher, and she brings along a group of women. I would guess they would get about 400, 410 species without any problem. And she's truly a great spot otter, which would probably add 2 or 3. Easy peasy. Thanks for that excellent question. Any other questions on Barat tour? Yeah, she added a great comment too that I described her group well. And there you go. All right, my friends. Let's move on to our next geographic location. Leo, thank you so much, and thank you for the question.
Well, the next area that I will be covering is the foothills of the Himalayas, and we do 2 sites that we stay at. One is Sattal, and the other one is at Pangod. And between them, you got this town of Nainital, which was like the holiday home for all during the British rule in India. But we stay at Sattal and we stay at Pangod because both these places give us access to very good birding locations in the area. Now, the altitude that we'll be moving at from within these 2 areas is from 1,370 to 1,985 meters. And like Charles was asking earlier, well, we do have winters over there. When you're up in Pangod, you can get snowed in, and that is in February. And when the snow's coming out there, we do not have the technology and things out in the hills over there to clear up the road. So sometimes if you're stuck in, you can get stuck in, or sometimes you have to come out before the snow comes in to avoid you getting stuck and messing up the tour. But that does not happen very often. But we do get snow up in the hills, and we do get a lot of snow up in Pangod. Mainly the habitat out in the hills is conifers, broadleaf forest, and it is a different type of birding because it is totally forest birding. We do have a lot of rivers flowing through in the hills, and we spend a lot of time along the rivers scanning for forktails, dippers. And as we move, a lot of the birds, you get different species at different altitudes. So we have to move to the high altitudes to pick up certain species that we would not get in the low altitude. But if it does snow or the weather does get bad higher up, a lot of the birds get pushed down lower. So the chances are quite good that in case it does snow, you do get a lot of the birds coming lower down. And you also get a lot of different species at times like that. The birding in the foothills is exceptional, and I always enjoy birding in the foothills because it's more challenging. It's forest birding, and you get small mixed flocks of tits, warblers, and then you get flycatchers. So it's always things that are there around you, feeding flocks, and it is just nice to get through and pick them when you're moving in. We do have a lot of specialities that are restricted to the Himalayas and that you find in the West and Central Himalayas, and we get some of them in these areas that we visit. Besides that, we also concentrate mainly on pheasants, laughing thrushes, forktails, and these are species that we will not get lower down in Corbett. So we try and focus mainly on those species when we are up in the foothills. Rufus cibia is one of the species that is found up in the foothills. This is a view of the lake, one of the lakes at Sattal. Sattal has 7 lakes in the area, and this is one of the lakes. Unfortunately, none of these lakes do have any birds on them. But we usually bird the forest around the lakes because that's where we find a lot of mixed flocks and feeding flocks moving through. The key species, some of the key species in these 2 parts of Sattal and Pangot are cheer pheasant, Cocklas pheasant, Nepal wren babbler, which is a very small babbler, a totally skulker, and not very easy to see because when it does show itself, it just shows itself for a couple of seconds. So you've got to keep trying to look at it and then getting views of it. Black-chinned babbler is quite a common species up in the Himalayas. Himalayan ruby throat and Siberian ruby throat are both 2 ruby throats that we get up in the Himalayas. We get them both at Pangot and Sattal. Golden bush robin is another species that is found up in the foothills. We also get it at Corbett. Himalayan bluetail, a regular species that you find in the foothills. Rufous-chinned laughing thrush is one of the few laughing thrushes that we get in the area. Himalayan greenfinch, another bird that's restricted to the Himalayas. Rufus sebia. Spotted forktail is one of the forktails among the 3 forktails that we get. And Himalayan griffon is in the vulture family, and we do get the Eurasian griffon, and we do get a few other raptors as well, and the lammergei in this area. The Himalayan ruby throat that you see is, I mean, I wouldn't say it's quite a common bird, but we do get it quite regularly on the tour. And it is found mainly up in the Himalayas. The rufous corrugated flycatcher is one of the many flycatchers that we get in the area. Black-load tits, again, we have a selection of tits in the foothills, and I think black-load tit is one of the best ones. I mean, everybody views them differently. Himalayan greenfinch is a specialty of the area. And then we have great barbet, which again, we do have quite a few barbets in India. Great barbet is another one that's mainly restricted to the foothills. Whistler's warbler is not a very common warbler, but we do make a lot of effort to get this. We do have a lot of other warblers that we get on this part of the tour as well, which you would not get lower down in the plains, nor would you get it in Corbett. So we try and focus mainly on getting the species which are restricted to the Himalayan foothills when we're up here. And then you have the spot-winged grosbeak, which again is a resident bird in the Himalayas. Mountain bulbul is one of the best bulbuls, I would say, that you get in the foothills of the Himalayas. And it's not very easy to find this bird because there's not many in number. And so you got to keep your ears open for whenever you hear a call and then try and focus on finding them. Himalayan bluetails are pretty frequent along the drives as we drive or as we're walking along trails. Blue whistling thrush is another common species up in the foothills, which can be seen, I guess, nearly on every walk. Gray-winged blackbird is not a very common bird, but we do get it on our tours when we're up in the foothills as well. A lot of these birds are split between Sattal and Pangot, and there are some that you get only in Pangot, and there are some that you get only in Sattal. And that's the reason why we have to spend time at Pangot as well to find species that we would not get in Sattal. Blue-fronted redstart is a species that is found around at Pangot. We do get it in Sattal occasionally. Striated laughing thrush is one of the few laughing thrushes. I mean, we've got a nice selection of laughing thrushes in the foothills. We usually get nearly all the laughing thrushes that are in the area on a trip. Rusty-cheeked scimitar babbler is also another species that is a lot of clients love to see and is quite high up on the list. Rufous-chained laughing thrush is another species of laughing thrush that is mainly restricted to the forest in the Himalayas, and you also get it in the other parts of the Himalayas as well. Pheasants, we do get a few pheasants, but the main ones that we target when we are up at Pangot is the koklas and the cheer pheasant, both of which are very difficult, very hard, because for the koklas, we usually do an early morning drive from the lodge, because at that time of the day, they're usually on the road feeding. So the chances of seeing them at that time are very good. And it's the same with cheer pheasant, because early morning they're out on the slopes feeding, and later on in the day, they move into the shade, and then got to go and try back again in the evening. A lot of the areas in Pangot, a lot of the slopes have been burnt over the last few years. So the numbers of cheer pheasants have dropped, but fortunately we've got another site now that we've got good numbers of cheer pheasants, and which are much more approachable and easier to see. Red-billed blue magpie is quite a common species in Pangot and Sattal. Black francolin, we do have places where they've got hides and feeders, and we do occasionally visit one of these places, and one of these feeders has a regular visit from the black francolin. Well, that's with Sattal and Pangot.
Yeah. Just a quick question. What lodge do you stay in at Pangot?
We got the Jungle Lore. Jungle Lore is the one we stay at Pangot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, we're always happy, and whether it's this tour or any tour, we're always glad to send out lodging list of what we use. I don't put it in the trip itinerary here because it's just detailed. It's not that important, but we're always happy to send that stuff out with trip advisor reviews attached. Any other questions out there, folks? Great, thank you very much. We'll move on to Corbett National Park.
Well, moving on to this is the last reserve that we do on our North India tour, the Corbett National Park. I mean, we do sometimes alternate the tour the other way around in case we need to for logistic reasons. But Corbett National Park is usually the last one that we do on our tour, where we spend around 4 nights. And Corbett National Park is quite a well-known reserve, mainly for the tigers and for all Jim Corbett stories about his time in India. The forest is mainly thick woodland forest. It has the river, which is a floodplain, and then the grasslands. And as it is the foothills of the Himalayas, you get all the water from the foothills coming down. So anytime it rains, the water levels pick really fast in Corbett. We get a lot of species in Corbett that you do not get up in Satal and Pangot, nor do you get on the other side in Rajasthan. So a lot of species vary from in each area that we do as we travel around. Corbett has also got a big diversity of raptors, and the mammals in Corbett are really good, mainly for tiger, elephant, leopard again. And then you got the rivers where we scan the rivers for ibisbill, which do visit the rivers up at Corbett as well. The picture on the screen now is great hornbill, a common bird that you see in Corbett quite regularly, even just from the hotel or anywhere around when you're driving. This is a scene of the river, a view of the river when the waters are low. When the water levels go up, it comes right up to the top and you cannot see anything, and the rivers flow really fast out there. Some of the key species in Corbett that we focus on is ibisbill. We do not have the ibisbill coming up in Corbett in big numbers. Over the last few years, we've had just 2 or 3 birds, individuals coming, and they come to the regular spot every year in the same area. So the chances are quite good of seeing them over there. White-capped redstart is quite frequently seen along the rivers with plumbeous redstart. We scan the rivers for wall creeper. Long-billed thrush, you get them sometimes in the forest, along dry streams. We do a bit of walking, like in Ranthambore. The park, within the park, you're restricted to 4-wheel drive, small vehicles. And when you're outside the park, you can walk in certain areas. So we do a bit of birding on foot, depending on, because the forest department does inform you of certain areas that you're not allowed to walk in, depending on the movement of the tigers, because the tigers do come outside the park as well. And there's a lot seen outside the park on the main roads and things like that. We have 3 species of TCR that we look for while we're in Corbett. And looking for TCR is mainly when we are on foot in certain areas. Great slaty woodpecker is one of the big woodpeckers. Not very easy to see, but you can really hear them when they're coming and flying in and they're calling. You can hear them in the distance. And so the chances are quite good of finding them at that time. Common green magpie, a very beautiful bird, not always easy to find. Great hornbill, as I said, is quite common. White-throated bushchat, another typical species, a grassland species, but we do put a lot of effort in finding it. You also get 3 species of fish eagles in the area. Collared falconet, which is a very small falcon. Again, we do put a lot of effort in finding that. And then you have the mammals like Asian elephants, which you do come across when you're in the forest, or sometimes when they're crossing the roads, along the main roads when you're driving through. And then you got Bengal tiger as well, which is quite common as you drive along sometimes, or when you're on the safaris. Some of the species, bird species, just to name a few, you got the gray-headed fish eagle. Again, this species is quite widespread. You get it in Northeast India, you get it in Northern India. There are sightings down in South India, not as much, but it is quite common and quite easily seen in Northern India. Changeable hawk eagle, another beautiful bird, which is found quite regularly on this tour in Corbett. Himalayan griffins, we get to see them up in Pangot, Satal, and down in Corbett as well, with Eurasian griffins sometimes, and other vultures. Slaty-headed tisia, chestnut-headed tisia is one of the tisias that we find in Corbett. These birds are total skulkers, like I said, like the wren babblers, and they do make it quite difficult sometimes to find them because they just call and they don't show themselves. And it takes a lot of time and effort and patience to sit and wait. And then we get to see them. White-throated bush-chat isn't very difficult. If you're in the grasslands, you need to spend a lot of time. And we do get sightings of them around on the drives in the park in Corbett. College pheasant is a pheasant that's common in the foothills, as well as you get to see it in Corbett as well. A very beautiful pheasant. Long-billed thrush, like I said, is one of the beautiful thrushes because it's different from the others, and it's not very easy to find because they tend to stay along dry riverbeds, picking through leaves and sticks and everything. So you got to scan certain areas. They usually tend to stay in the same area when they come into the winter. So chances of getting them is quite easy when you know which area to look out for them. Green magpie, like I said, a very beautiful magpie. It's found in a lot of parks in Southeast Asia, and we do get it in Sattal and Corbett as well. Blue-throated barbet, one of the few barbets that we get. Very beautiful, small barbet. Quite common and quite easily seen in Corbett. Streak-throated woodpecker is, one of the few woodpeckers, but a lot of people overlook this bird when they're looking at it, and they take it for any other woodpecker, and they miss identifying it. But the streak-throated is found mainly in the dry fields outside the reserve in Corbett. Ibisbill, like I said, there's not many of them that come up to Corbett, and they usually frequent the same area. There's at least 1 or 2 birds that come in every year. The maximum we've seen is 4, but they didn't stay for long. So it's mainly been 3, 2, and 1. So we do spend a lot of time walking along the river or scanning the river, searching for them. Wall creeper is again along the river and along the banks. So we do have to go on foot and spend a lot of time looking out for that. White-capped redstart is a species that is quite commonly seen right from the time when you're up in Sattal, Pangod, and then down to Corbett. As long as you're along the river, the chances of seeing it mostly. And then we have the Himalayan bulbul, which is a species that's restricted to the foothills of the Himalayas, and you get it in Corbett as well. Green-tailed sunbird, one of the beautiful sunbirds, like we were discussing earlier. I mean, all the sunbirds in India look beautiful, and they've all got their own speciality. Green-tailed sunbird is one that's quite common in northern India. And then the golden bush robin, another beautiful bird that's quite a skulker and very difficult to get unless it's calling and you know where it's calling, and then you try and get it out and get the best views of it. So that's with our short introduction to a few sites of birding in northern India.
Short introduction, like that. I saw you slip the word introduction in there. Leo loves to have a 4-hour presentation on all of his birding tours, and I forced him to cut it down to an hour. But between the two of us, we've probably done 20 or 30 of these things with guides around the world. This again is Chuck Thornton Colby with the Partnership for International Birding. I'm going to get to these questions here in just a little bit. And there you go. Just on the wrap up side, just if I guess I'll do a couple of bits here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the pandemic. I want to talk a little bit about why travel with the PIB, and then we'll do any final questions that we have and a little bit administrative stuff. And how much time do we have? See how fast. Ooh,
2 minutes.
Yeah. If you need to cut off because you need to go, that's perfectly fine. I'll start with the key administrative thing, which is our legal requirement that all the names that get printed on the side of the presentation do not show up in the recording. If for some reason we mention your first and last name and you feel that's a privacy violation, just email us and let us know. And I did that on one person on the pre-part art of the conversation. Things that blurred out of my mouth, but that was not a recorded bit. But if anybody else feels their privacy is not protected, please email us at service@pibird.com and we will edit the video presentation to take out any reference to you. We do appreciate those privacy issues. Just a few bits about the PIB. We always do use premier birding guides in each country because we're not flying guides from around the world. Our tours are often 20% less expensive than some of our competitors. You'll also find out that these partnerships that we have kind of help with the logistical expertise and sort of finding higher value lodging for bird watching. And truly, we always just have a lot of local knowledge about where to find birds, which I think was demonstrated well with Leio today. We also save an acre for bird conservation for every booking. In over 15 years in business now, I think now closer to 16, we have saved over 85,000 acres through our partnerships with places like the Rainforest Trust and the World Land Trust, to name a few. Just briefly about the pandemic, we are requiring that all the participants in our tours have vaccines. And we've run a pretty good set of tours in the USA at this point since about April 15th. We've got a couple private tours coming up in the Americas. And I think we'll have some group travel internationally towards the end of the year, just depending upon where progress is on vaccines. In India, though, the current news is kind of glum. They have reached 10% of vaccines, with 10% of the population has now been vaccinated with at least one dose. So in 2 weeks, that'll be a 2-dose thing. I think by September, October, they'll be beyond the 55% threshold. And we should see, we hope and pray, a crash of cases in India. So we're hoping to return to India birding probably in early 2022. Gosh, what else do I have to share? I think that's about it. Leio, do you have any other questions out there?
No, nothing has come up yet.
Somebody asked how photo friendly our tours are. Leo's a big photographer.
I'm not a big photographer, but I think as long as anybody, whoever is a photographer, doesn't disturb the other people when you're enjoying the bird and can click from a distance, I think it's not an issue at all. I think everybody nowadays has a camera on the tour. And I mean, as long as you restrict yourself not to get into anybody else's way to get a picture or to flush a bird while everybody's watching it to get a picture, I think, and that's what we try and maintain as guides, to keep everybody into that limit of how far you can get, because we do not sell any of our tours as a photographic tour. So that's what I can say.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question directly, as I always do. I mean, these days, about 40-60% of our clients carry a pretty big lens, but everybody knows it's a bird watching tour. And when it's ready, when it's time to get in the vehicle, everybody needs to get in the vehicle so we can move to the next site. And there you go. Another question is, in India is a huge country. Do you just want to mention the 4 or 5 bird watching areas we have in India. There's Northeast India, which has 2 or 3 different tours, right?
We got Northeast India, which we do Arunachal Pradesh and the Assam Plains. We do Mishmi Hills and the Brahmaputra, and we do Nagaland. We do Northern India, which we cover up the whole of Rajasthan and Uttarakhand and UP. We do Gujarat, again, which covers up the whole of Gujarat and Rajasthan. We do Southern India, which covers Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. We do Goa, which is an individual state which covers by itself. And then we do the Andaman Islands as another tour. So I think
Right,
that's
I think you missed the Western Ghats, right?
that's the Goa.
That's the Goa part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people think of Goa as Western Ghats and
Yeah.
Goa, but Leo was born and raised in Goa, so he sees it through local eyes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I see it through a birder's eyes. But so if somebody did all 4 regions in India, what would their total species take be? Probably 800, 900 species.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing.
It should be around 900 if you did the whole thing and if you did it at the right time, because they've got all if you do it all at the right time, you should get around 900 species. You could get more than that if you put in a bit of effort.
Yeah, and typically Leo's a pretty well-known academy. Leo's a pretty well-known bird guide at British Bird Fair. Your British clientele usually come back with you 3 or 4 times. Is that right?
Yeah, till they get fed up of me.
Let's see here. Let's see if we got any other questions, and then we'll do a wrap up. I think that's it. Cool. So the full presentation will be available on our YouTube page, which is linked in from our main website at www.pibird.com. I just want to say thank you for all of those who put questions to us today, and thank you all for participating and listening. We hope to get you on a birding tour soon. Learn more at www.pibird.com. Leo, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, everybody, for joining in.
Great. Leo, I'll let you do.
Yeah.
Actually, I have the shut down and you have the, I'll let you turn off the recording.
Yeah.